Even the idea of juggling 5 needles at the same time could be quite intimidating. But in reality, it's not hard at all, as long as we follow 2 simple rules. Keep the stitches in the middle of the needle and don't try to control all needles at once. Let's see how these rules apply to real-life knitting. Let's make a small swatch to see how we can work in the round using 5 double-pointed needles. Use any type of cast on you like and cast on all stitches on one of the double-pointed needles. It's better if the number of stitches is a multiple of 4 because we're going to divide them between 4 needles, but it's also okay if you cast on any other number of stitches. Actually, I made it a little bit challenging and I cast on 18 stitches, a number that is not a multiple of 4. So how do we divide 18 stitches between 4 needles? That's simple. We simply put the 2 extra stitches, we spread them between 2 groups of stitches. So we're going to divide them as 4, 5, 4, and 5. That's it. Now take the needle with the stitches on it in your left hand so that the working yarn is at the left side of the stitches. See, right here. Depending on the type of cast on you used, your yarn tail could be either here or here. I used long tail cast on, so my yarn tail is at the same side as the working yarn, but if your yarn tail is over here, that's fine. It doesn't really matter at all. So keep this needle in your left hand and take one empty needle in your right hand. And slip the first group of stitches purlwise. That means we insert the tip of the right needle from right to left into the stitch. Slip the first group of stitches from the left needle to the right needle. And the first group of stitches is going to be 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now move these stitches to the middle of the needle like this, and that's our rule number 1. Remember, we keep the stitches in the middle of the needle and simply let it hang there. Now take another empty needle and slip the second group of stitches same way to the right needle, and this time it's going to be 5 stitches, just like this. Again, move the stitches to the center of the needle and let it hang there. And let's do it one more time. Slip the third group of stitches, that's 4 stitches, slip them to the third needle and move them to the central part of the needle. And now let's move these stitches to the center of the needle as well, and here we go. We've just divided these stitches between 4 needles. Now let's arrange stitches for working in the round. Here's how it happens. Place the yarn and the yarn tail to the back of the work like this, so they are not in the way. And arrange the double-pointed needles so that they form a square over here, so that the working yarn comes from the right. So the working yarn is attached to the needle that is at the right side of this square. Now, as is the case with any way of working in the round, it is very important to make sure that the stitches are not twisted around the needle. And with double-pointed needles, it's quite easy. You simply turn the cast on edge inside the square, and then if something is twisted like this, you will notice it right away and you will fix it, right? So now basically we are ready to start working in the round, and but before that we can join stitches for working in the round. It's optional, it's up to you. If you don't like to do anything extra, you simply start working in the round, or you can use one of the ways to join stitches before you actually start knitting. I usually pass the last stitch over the first one, and here's how I do it. I would bring these 2 groups of stitches closer to the tips of the needles, and then I will slip the first stitch that was cast on to the right needle, and then I will insert the left needle under the last stitch that was cast on and pass it over the first stitch, but I won't drop any of these stitches. They're still on the needle. I didn't drop anything. That's it. Now I move the needle so that the stitches are at the center of the needle, and I'm ready to start working in the round. Here's how we do it. Take the needle that is at the left side of the working yarn. See, here's the working yarn, and here's the needle that is at the left side of the working yarn. So take this needle in your left hand. Then the yarn stays at the back because we're gonna knit all these stitches, and take the last empty needle in your right hand and place it so that it sits on top of the needle that is sticking out at you. So the right needle should be on top. And then you can use right hand or left hand, doesn't really matter at all. You simply use these two needles to knit all stitches of the first group of stitches, just like this. Insert the needle into the stitch, wrap it with the yarn, pull it through. And see, I'm only holding these two needles. I'm working only with these two needles, and I don't even pay attention at the other needles because it's not necessary. It's absolutely unnecessary, and it's not important at all. So I'm not gonna even spend time, worrying about those needles, because the stitches are at the center of each needle. The needles are well balanced, and there is very little chance that the stitches are gonna slip off the needle. So I'm not actually worrying about these needles at all. I'm just focused on the two needles that are in my hands, and that's our rule number 2. Don't try to control all needles at once. So now I finished knitting the first group of stitches, and here's what I do. I push the needle right away so that these stitches are sitting in the middle of the needle. And then I do some other thing. I push the tip of this needle down so that it is underneath the needle that is at the left side of this needle. And now I'm ready to work on the second group of stitches. So it's the same idea. I take the empty needle in my right hand, and then I take the needle that is to the left of the working yarn. I take it in my left hand, and then I push the needle to bring the stitches closer to the tip of the needle, and I knit this group of stitches as well. And that's basically how it works. You simply knit or work in any other pattern on each of the groups of stitches, and after you finish one group of stitches, move it right away so that it is in the middle of the needle. Then push the needle so that it is underneath the needle that is at the left side. Take the empty needle in your right hand, the needle that is to the left from the working yarn, take it in your left hand, and continue working. Normally there is no need even to mark the beginning of the round because we have a yarn tail. And now that I'm gonna work the last group of stitches, I will see my yarn tail and I would know that I finished the round. That's gonna be in just one stitch. And here we go. Again, I move the stitches to the center and I push this tip so that it is underneath the other needle. And now I see my tail, and that means I've just finished one round working with 5 needles. After you complete a few rounds, you will notice that the work is not that wobbly anymore. Continue to work on that swatch until you feel confident knitting with 5 needles. For more tips on working with 5 double-pointed needles, follow the link below to read the full tutorial. To download that tutorial as a PDF, join the All Tutorials Club or our community on Patreon. Thank you for watching this video and have a wonderful week. I'll see you in the next tutorial.